There's a lot of unemployment, emigration. Parents and grandparents are missing their children. They're worried for the future, and I suppose I didn't want to shy away from that. I spent time at a farmer's mart and a cattle and sheep mart in Connemara, and I heard some very, very tragic stories of suicide and depression, and that is quite a theme in the country. But beyond all that, I've also heard huge stories of hope, resilience, strength, and the human spirit and how it can conquer both injustice and adversity. And that's what really excites me at the moment, is to try and unlock a lot of that, because I believe strongly that human beings are capable of amazing things, and when they really invest in listening to themselves and are heard by others and get their voices heard, then they can achieve great things.
It's all uplifting stuff, Rory, in one sense, when you're on a quest for hope.
Yeah, a lot of it. I intentionally called it Hitching for Hope, because I wanted to, as I said, uncover and unlock where the hope is, because a lot of people seem to think that there is no future in this country, that we're done for, and I don't believe that for a second. I believe that this is a great country, great people. It's a beautiful island we live on. It's a safe, green, clean island, and obviously we have no shortage of issues, whether it be corruption, abuse, lack of leadership. But it's the people that I believe have the ideas and the visions, but they're not being heard. So I'm making my humble contribution to going around and listening to people.
And how are they taking to you? I mean, what's it like hitchhiking for a start? Are they stopping for you? Because I know I'd be very loath to pick up a hitchhiker.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things in that. Firstly, yes, they're picking me up, thankfully. I don't know if this good weather might be helping, but also bad weather, it's good because they feel sorry for you sometimes as well. Yeah. But I do think there's a gender dynamic as well. 90% of the lifts are men, and I think women, whether they be hitchhikers or someone that may pick someone up, are quite often fearful for their own personal safety. Naturally. Yeah. So I have reflected on that, and that even has become an issue that I've thought about. So you think about things on the road, I suppose, and the fact that I'm a young man in Ireland and I have more rights and more privileges and more safety than a young woman is quite a serious issue in some ways. So I wouldn't necessarily advocate that young women go out hitching, but I do want to do away with the idea that we're all kind of, the country's full of murderers, because it's not. It's a relatively safe country, and people on the whole are kind, generous, trusting, and that's what I'm finding.
And where are you sleeping, and what are you surviving on?
It's not that hard. I've camped. Well, that was hard actually. I camped on Inishbofin Island, and it was shocking weather. It was before the good weather, and I came in with my tail between my legs at 6 in the morning, looking for a refuge, and some kind stranger made me porridge, and that really uplifted me. Again, the kindness of strangers. And I've stayed in B&Bs and hostels. Stayed with my 89-year-old grandmother, Mary Keenan, in Bundoran, and friends and family. And in fact, in Derry, when I was up there, I did an interview on BBC Radio Foyle, and the presenter of the show offered me a bed for the night, and then they invited me to come join them the next day and join their outside broadcast for the 12th of July, which was something I would have never been at before with the Orange Marches. Yeah.
Okay, now you grew up in Cavan, which is one of the border counties.
Well, it's in Ulster County. Yeah.
So what was that like last Friday?
Yeah, it was a challenge. We grew up, you know, on this side of the border, thinking the Orange men were the boogeymen and all that kind of thing. And I went to college in Scotland, so I did meet people from across the divide, and I knew that we're kind of all the one, really. And sometimes the politics and the hate and the religion interferes and agendas take over. And so I was very happy to confront that by going along and not fearing the Union Jack or the songs or the marches or the drums. And really I just found that it was St. Patrick's Day with Union Jacks. Now politically that might be challenging, and I know a lot of nationalist communities, there are conflict and tension zones. I don't shy away from that. I know there's big issues in Ardoyne, but I met some really nice people, and they were very hospitable, and I think we're on the right road towards peace there.
Okay, but initially were you not uncomfortable?
Well, I was uncomfortable the night before, I have to say, because I did go to a bonfire in a loyalist estate at 2 in the morning. Okay. And that was out of my comfort zone. But the nature of what I'm doing is I'm not treating it just as a holiday. I want to get in and hear what people are saying.
And what were they saying at the bonfire?
Well, most of them probably had never met anyone from across the border. That's the bottom line, you know. And there's a lot of kind of hate and bigotry and ignorance. But really a lot of it is just ignorance. And when two human beings sit down and actually have a chat or share a beer or whatever they do, generally you find out you've actually a lot in common. And I think people are struggling on whatever community you're from, and we've more in common than we do apart. Now, again, there's probably another side to that maybe I wouldn't have stayed till 3 in the morning, but it was something that I enjoyed doing, and I think it's important to get out of your comfort zone and talk to people you maybe normally don't talk to, and sometimes it can teach you a lot as well.
Okay. Well, you're travelling the 32 counties on the island.
I'm trying.
Well, at least you're trying. So were opinions different from in the 6 counties than they were in the 26 counties, simply because there's different points of governance?
I found a big difference between, say, Derry and the west of Ireland. I think the west of Ireland is ravaged with emigration and unemployment and a kind of a despair, but also a wholesome community kind of fabric, which was strong as well. Whereas in Derry, it has its own little thing going on. Obviously, it's a city that has struggled so much over the years and has had an awful lot of hardship and still does. But the city of culture and the peace process, it has had a shot in the arm, and the people there really are looking forward. They're very upbeat and very resilient, and I think they have that kind of community spirit that sometimes we might have got distracted from, and they know that you can only ever achieve things when you come together as a force, both sides of the divide, rich and poor, young and old. And I think Derry has a lot to teach us in that regard.
So your tour so far has taken you to where? Apart from Derry and West of Ireland.
Yeah, started in Galway. Well, I've been going slower than expected. Started in Galway, spent quite some time in Connemara, Inishbofin Island, which was a complete highlight, and then up through Mayo, spent a good bit of time there in Achill Island. Passed by the Shell refinery in North Mayo, just to see what the status of that was. Obviously a divided community there. There's been a lot of tensions over the years, a lot of talk about the potential for job creation, but also a lot of hostility towards how the project has been delivered, the bad economics of it, the environmental issues of that, and how people have been treated by government and corporations and that kind of thing. So it was interesting to see that. And then I moved on up to Donegal, spent a fair bit of time in Sligo and Donegal, and eventually made my way to Derry, and then travelled across the border. And yesterday morning found myself in the Áras. Had to put on the suit and clean up myself a bit. And I spent time at the National Day of Commemoration, and that was really interesting. I would have never been to anything like that before. And it was honouring and remembering soldiers and people who have died in Irish wars and wars overseas and UN and for the UN. And I suppose it was worth reflecting on that, particularly as we come up to the major anniversaries like 1916 and those that have come before us. And sometimes we forget our own history and those that have struggled before us, and I think it is worth remembering where we've come from in many ways. But
when you're back though, talking to real people, getting into regular people's cars, you know, and you tell them I'm on a mission to find out, you know, what people are thinking. First of all, what are people saying to you? And secondly, are they then opening up and telling you incredibly personal stories about themselves?
Oh, yeah. Like Irish people love to chat, as you know, and I think when they appreciate that I'm honest in hopefully I'm honest in what I'm doing, and that there's no profit incentive, and it's not part of a political agenda as such. And they know that the trip is going to end in 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And so they open up and they tell me about failed marriages, failed businesses, alcoholism. And I think that's the full spectrum of humanity, is that there's hardly a person on this island that hasn't been through some form of major issue in their life. And if they haven't, they probably will do. And it's important that we don't shy away from those, because when we box them in and hide away from it, that's when things go really wrong and mental health issues and suicide and things like that happen. So I want to hear that, and it's important to talk about it. But beyond that, there's a really strong message of resilience about the power within each and every one of us to overcome hard times as individuals, whether it be true if you have you're suffering unemployment, you've suffered real injustices, you're feeling really angry with the government, that no matter what it is, you can find a strength within, and especially when you join forces with other people in your community.
And is that what they're saying to you? I mean,
completely, yeah. And I mean, look, there's no broad brush. There's a million stories for a million people, but I am picking up common themes, and I suppose in a threefold way. One would be despair, anger, a real sense that the country, there's two sets of laws, one for the rich, one for the poor, and a real raw anger and sadness about that. And secondly, that we need to return to some degree of simplicity about how we live our lives, and then community, as I mentioned.
Okay, so I'm sure you set out to find out if the politicians are completely out of touch with people. Are they more out of touch than you thought?
Well, I think that's up for the voters to decide in the next election. But yeah, I don't want to draw entire conclusions until I finish the trip. I've another couple of weeks to go, and I'm blogging at my website.
Yeah, and so people can follow that. Yeah,
it's community.ie, and on Facebook, Hitching for Hope, and on Twitter, Hitching for Hope.
And you're finishing up the trip, you're giving a talk at McGill School.
The 29th and the 30th as well.
Okay. Well, listen, people can follow you on your blog. We wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you're hitching a lift when you leave our studios today. And maybe you'll come back and let us know how you got on.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, good to see you again, Rory.
Now, you at home may have a story for us on the show. If you do, here's how to get in touch.
If you've got a story you'd like to share, or if you'd like to get in touch with the show, we want to hear from you. You can email us at themorningshow@tv3.ie. Find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/TV3 Morning Show. You can talk to us on Twitter using the hashtag TV3MS in your message, and you can follow our Twitter stream at TV3 Morning Show for updates on features and competitions. However you get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. Now, is farming an appealing or viable career choice for the younger generation? We'll be asking 3 Macron Affirma members after the break.